Stop scrolling for a second and listen closely, because what I'm about to tell you will change the way you understand women, relationships, and your own power forever. Most men panic the moment a woman distances herself. They chase, they beg, they over-explain, they lose themselves in fear, and they never understand why she drifts further away. But what if I told you that everything you've been taught about getting her attention, about keeping her, about proving your love, is completely wrong? What if I told you that the very behaviors you think show strength actually destroy attraction instantly? The truth is brutal and simple. When a woman ignores you, when she pulls away, when she stops responding the way you want her to, it is not a rejection of your value. It is a test of your strength, your composure, and your self-respect, and most men fail that test before they even realize it started. But if you understand the principle I'm about to share, if you can master it, you will never again be at the mercy of her attention, her mood, or her decisions. You will step into a level of emotional authority that she can't ignore, a presence that sparks curiosity, respect, and attraction, and a power that makes distance work in your favor, not against you. By the time this video is over, you will understand exactly what to do when she pulls back, how to maintain your dignity, and how to create magnetic energy that draws her in without chasing, begging, or over-explaining. You will see why silence can speak louder than words, why focusing on your own life can make her rethink her distance, and why the outcome of her actions should never define your worth. Stay with me until the end, because once you hear this, your relationships, your mindset, and your life will never be the same again. When a woman distances herself, the first thing every man assumes is that he has done something wrong, that she is rejecting him, that somehow he has failed. And that assumption is what drives most men into frantic, desperate behaviors, chasing, over-texting, calling repeatedly, trying to explain, trying to fix something they don't even understand. But the truth is far more profound, far more subtle, and far more powerful than that. Distance is rarely about you as an individual. It is almost always about her internal landscape. It is about her testing the emotional foundation you have built. It is about seeing if your stability is dependent on her presence, or if it is rooted in something much deeper, something unshakable. Think about it. Why does a woman withdraw in the first place? It is rarely arbitrary. It is rarely just a whim. She pulls away because she is scanning your energy, observing how you respond under pressure, examining whether your identity is contingent on her validation, or if you have cultivated a life, a mind, and a presence that functions independently. This is not manipulation. This is instinct. Every emotionally intelligent human, male or female, seeks partners who are whole, who are grounded, who are able to maintain themselves without collapsing when life shifts unexpectedly. Distance is her way of seeing if you are that person, and most men fail this test immediately. They mistake her silence for rejection and react from fear, not from presence. They lose themselves in the process. They forget that the most magnetic form of attraction is not in the words you say or the efforts you expend to regain attention. It is in the energy you hold when no one is watching. It is in your ability to remain composed, calm, and centered even when her attention is not guaranteed. When she observes that you can continue to exist, thrive, and maintain yourself, worth without needing her approval, she sees something rare, something compelling. She sees a man who is not easily shaken, a man who has cultivated a life that does not collapse under temporary absence, a man who is not defined by her proximity. Distance is not punishment, it is a mirror. It reflects your own strength, your emotional maturity, your capacity to remain steady in uncertainty. If you approach it with panic, neediness, or resentment, it will only amplify the distance because it signals instability. But if you approach it with awareness, with understanding, with a calm acceptance that her withdrawal is a test of your inner stability rather than a commentary on your worth, then distance becomes an opportunity to show the depth of your character, the strength of your mind, the resilience of your heart. Consider this carefully. Attraction is not created through frantic pursuit or endless explanations. It is created through emotional gravity, through the quiet, almost invisible demonstration that you are complete within yourself. When she distances herself, your response is a reflection of your internal state. Panic reflects dependence. Calm reflects sovereignty. Confusion reflects insecurity. Presence reflects mastery. And mastery is magnetic. Women are drawn to men who are anchored, who navigate the currents of uncertainty without being swept away, who allow space without allowing fear to dictate their behavior. This understanding changes everything. It shifts your perspective from fear to strategy, from reaction to insight, from neediness to power. It teaches that when she steps back, the most powerful move is not forward, not closer, not faster. The most powerful move is stillness. The most powerful move is silence that communicates confidence without a single word. The most powerful move is life lived fully in her absence, showing that your value is inherent, not conditional, and your presence is not dictated by her actions, but by your own unwavering standard. So remember this above all, distance is not a rejection, it is a test. It is a measure of your internal strength, your self-respect, and your emotional intelligence. When you understand this, you no longer react in fear, you respond with clarity, you no longer chase, you attract. You no longer question your worth. You demonstrate it effortlessly through presence, through composure, through life lived deliberately. The woman who distances herself is not a threat. She is a mirror reflecting the solidity of your inner world. And the man who can remain unshaken when she pulls away is the man who becomes unforgettable. Because when you master the art of stability in the face of her distance, you are no longer just a man she notices, you are a man she cannot ignore. When a woman distances herself, most men feel a compulsion to fill the void she has created. They think that the silence between them is dangerous, that it is a threat to the connection, and they panic. They start texting, calling, over-explaining, or even arguing, as if words alone could bridge an invisible gap that has formed. And in that moment, they lose everything without even realizing it. What they fail to understand is that silence is not a problem, it is a tool. Silence is not absence, it is power. The very thing they fear is the thing that, if embraced, could transform their presence from ordinary to irresistible. Silence is the language of emotional authority. It communicates far more than words ever could. Words are easy to come by. Anyone can speak. Anyone can explain. Anyone can plead. But silence composed, intentional silence, is a reflection of inner strength. It signals that your energy, your confidence, your stability do not depend on her validation. It signals that your attention is not bought or forced, that your presence is not desperate, and that your worth exists independently of her responses. Most men cannot sit in silence without anxiety, which is why they fail this test instinctively. But a man who can hold his composure in quiet moments demonstrates a form of mastery that is magnetic, mysterious, and profoundly attractive. Understand this clearly. When she steps back, it is not always about what she wants from you, it is often about what she wants to see in you. Her distance is a measure of your response, a reflection of your inner world. When you speak excessively, when you chase, when you explain, what she sees is neediness, lack of control, and insecurity. When you respond with calm silence, she sees confidence, independence, and emotional sovereignty. Silence is not ignoring her. It is showing her, without words, that your foundation is solid, that your self-respect is unshakable, and that your life does not revolve around her approval. The power of silence is amplified because it creates space, a space for reflection, space for curiosity, and space for desire. When a man reacts to her withdrawal with words, he fills that space with his own fear and neediness. When a man chooses silence, he allows the natural dynamics of attraction to emerge. She begins to notice the subtle shift, the energy she cannot name but feels deeply. She starts to wonder why you are not frantic, why you are not pleading, why your calmness remains untouched by her distance. And that wonder ignites attraction far more effectively than any text message or apology ever could. Silence is also the ultimate test of self-discipline. It forces you to confront your own emotions without projecting them onto her. It teaches you patience, teaches you restraint, and teaches you the difference between action driven by fear and action driven by purpose. When you choose silence, you choose yourself, you choose your dignity, your composure, and your energy over temporary reactions. You communicate indirectly that you are not at the mercy of circumstance, that your value cannot be negotiated, and that you will not devalue yourself to fill a gap she created intentionally or unintentionally. This is where most men fail, and this is why silence is so powerful. It is not about proving her wrong, it is not about winning a game, and it is certainly not about manipulation. It is about demonstrating a level of emotional intelligence and self-mastery that cannot be ignored. It is about showing that your life has structure, meaning, and stability, and that her presence, while desired, is never a requirement for your equilibrium. When she sees a man who can be quiet in the face of distance, she does not feel pressure. She feels respect, curiosity, and eventually attraction. So remember this: the next time she pulls away, resist the urge to fill the silence. Resist the need to explain, to chase, to justify, or to plead. Instead, lean into stillness, lean into calm, lean into your own life, energy, and purpose. Let the silence speak louder than words ever could. Let it communicate your strength, your independence, and your unwavering self-respect. Because silence is not absence, silence is presence. The man who masters it does not need to beg, argue, or over-explain. He simply exists in a way that commands attention, sparks curiosity, and builds attraction naturally. And the moment you understand the power of silence, you no longer chase her reactions, you command them simply by holding your center. Silence is your invisible weapon, your quiet authority, and your strongest declaration. You are unshakable, you are grounded, and no distance, no withdrawal, no test can diminish your worth. When a woman distances herself, most men make the same mistake. They abandon their self-respect in exchange for attention. They trade dignity for validation, vulnerability for temporary closeness, and composure for the illusion of control. They believe that chasing, explaining, or pleading will restore the connection, but the harsh reality is that it only amplifies the problem. Desperation, even if disguised as love, signals insecurity. It communicates need, dependence, and fear. And when a woman senses that, she doesn't feel attraction, she feels pressure, obligation, and often a subtle aversion. The truth most men don't understand is simple yet radical. Self-respect is the single most powerful response you can offer when she pulls away. It is the invisible force that commands attention, shapes perception, and creates desire without a single word. When you refuse to lower your standards, when you refuse to compromise your dignity for temporary approval, you demonstrate an inner strength that is rare, magnetic, and compelling. Women are wired to notice it. They may not articulate it, but they feel it on a level deeper than thought. Energy speaks louder than words, presence louder than explanations, and self-respect louder than any apology. Self-respect over desperation is not about stubbornness or pride. It is not about ego or punishment. It is about clarity and self-mastery. It is about knowing that your worth is inherent, that your energy is non-negotiable, and that your life does not revolve around her availability. When you hold your dignity in the face of her withdrawal, you are communicating that you are whole, grounded, and complete. That signal cannot be misread, it is unmistakable. Desperation, on the other hand, clouds your energy. It bends your boundaries, distorts your intentions, and reduces your value in ways you don't even realize. Consider this carefully. A woman who distances herself is often searching, not for someone to chase her, but for someone to lead their own life with stability, purpose, and emotional composure. She wants to see whether your energy is dependent on her responses or whether it is rooted in something deeper. When a man reacts with desperation, he fails that test instantly. When he responds with self-respect, he passes effortlessly. This is why men who master this principle often experience a profound shift in attraction dynamics. Women return not because they were wrong, but because the energy they perceive in a man has become irresistible. Self-respect over desperation also changes the way you perceive the situation. Instead of panic, you feel perspective. Instead of fear, you feel power. Instead of confusion, you feel control. You no longer live under the illusion that her presence validates your existence. You no longer allow her actions to dictate your emotions. You become the kind of man who navigates uncertainty without collapsing, who maintains equilibrium in the face of withdrawal, and who uses her distance as a mirror to reflect on his own inner strength. It is important to understand the psychological principle at work here. Humans are instinctively drawn to confidence and repelled by neediness. Neediness signals insecurity, a lack of boundaries and dependence. Confidence signals self-sufficiency, strength, and the ability to protect and maintain one's own life. A man who responds to withdrawal with composure and self-respect triggers curiosity, admiration, and desire, because she senses that his life is complete and valuable independent of her actions. She is drawn not to his words, but to the energy behind them. This is why desperation never works. It is always a reaction driven by fear. Self-respect, on the other hand, is a strategy driven by awareness. It is not a tactic to manipulate her. It is a conscious choice to honor your own standards, your own dignity, and your own emotional sovereignty. It is about showing her, without speaking, that your life has structure, purpose, and meaning. that you are not a man who collapses under pressure, but a man who stands firm and grounded even when tested. So the next time she distances herself, the choice is clear. You can abandon your self-respect for temporary attention, or you can hold your dignity and watch the dynamics of attraction shift naturally in your favor. Desperation diminishes you, self-respect elevates you, one destroys the potential for connection. The other strengthens it in ways that words cannot achieve. Remember this: the man who preserves his self-respect in the face of withdrawal is the man who becomes unforgettable. The man who refuses to chase, explain, or plead is the man who commands attention effortlessly. And the man who places his dignity above desperation is the man who not only survives the distance, but thrives because of it. Because in the end, attraction is not about what you say, it is about who you are. And nothing communicates strength, depth, and magnetic energy better than unwavering self-respect. When a woman distances herself, most men make the fatal mistake of turning all their energy toward her absence. They obsess over why she pulled away, what they might have done wrong, and how they can regain her attention. They spiral into overthinking, emotional volatility, and actions that are reactive rather than deliberate. And in doing so, they reveal the truth they are desperately trying to hide. Their sense of self is tied to her presence, their worth is tied to her validation, and their stability is dependent on her responses. This is the exact opposite of attraction. This is exactly what repels her without him realizing it. The principle that changes everything is deceptively simple. When she distances herself, your focus must shift to your own life, not to her actions, not to her mood, not to her attention. Your life, your energy, your purpose must become your center of gravity. This is not a cliché or a feel-good motivational line. It is a psychological law. Women, like all human beings, are drawn to energy that is complete, self-sustained, and magnetic. A man who obsesses over her absence emits neediness. A man who lives fully despite her distance emits power, presence, and irresistible energy. Focusing on your own life does not mean ignoring her or being cold. It means actively building yourself in ways that are meaningful, visible, and independent. It means investing in your goals, your passions, your health, your growth, and your social connections. It means creating a life that feels full and abundant, where her attention is appreciated but never necessary. This shift in focus is subtle but profound. The energy you radiate when you are engaged in your own purpose communicates more than any explanation or argument ever could. It shows her that you are not easily shaken, that you are not defined by temporary circumstances, and that your presence in her life is an addition, not a requirement. When men lose themselves in her withdrawal, they unknowingly reduce their value. They become predictable, reactive, and emotionally transparent in a way that diminishes intrigue. But when men immerse themselves in their own lives, they cultivate depth, mystery, and emotional resilience. She may notice it consciously or subconsciously, but she cannot ignore it. She senses the difference in energy, the difference between someone who is whole and someone who is incomplete. That energy is magnetic because it signals stability, security, and the capacity for a man to lead not just in a relationship, but in his own existence. Consider this carefully. Life does not pause because someone distances themselves. Opportunities continue to arise, growth continues to unfold, and the world continues to move. A man who channels his focus into his own life is the man who gains momentum, who strengthens his presence, and who becomes irreplaceable. He is no longer reacting to circumstances outside his control. He is creating circumstances within his control. And in doing so, he naturally elevates himself to a position of authority, attraction, and emotional mastery. Focusing on your own life also recalibrates your mindset. Instead of obsessing over what she might be thinking or feeling, you observe from a place of neutrality. You see her distance not as a personal attack or a failure, but as a reflection of her own process, timing, and choices. You detach emotionally from outcomes that are outside your control, and you anchor yourself in what is entirely within your control, your energy, your decisions, and your actions. That detachment is not coldness, it is strength. It is the kind of strength that cannot be manufactured through chasing or explanations, only through authentic presence in your own life. This principle is simple in concept, but challenging in practice because it requires discipline, awareness, and self-trust. It requires resisting the urge to seek validation, resisting the temptation to fill the silence, and resisting the impulse to overanalyze her behavior. But the rewards are monumental. When you focus on your own life, not only does your energy become magnetic, but your self-respect becomes non-negotiable. Your confidence becomes visible, your stability becomes undeniable, and your presence becomes unforgettable. So the next time she distances herself, the choice is clear. You can expend your energy in reaction, or you can channel it into your life, your growth, and your purpose. Obsession diminishes you, engagement in your own life elevates you, chasing reduces attraction, self-mastery increases it. Remember this, the man who thrives while she withdraws is the man she cannot ignore. The man who is complete despite her distance is the man she cannot take for granted. Focus on your own life, because when you do, not only do you protect your dignity, you create the kind of magnetic energy that draws her back naturally, effortlessly, and powerfully. One of the most dangerous traps a man falls into when a woman distances herself is tying his identity, his value, and his emotional state to the outcome of her actions. Most men believe that if she comes back, they have succeeded. If she stays away, they have failed. And it is this illusion, the belief that external outcomes define internal worth, that creates panic, desperation, and emotional chaos. But the truth is deeper, more liberating, and far more powerful. Her choices do not determine your value. Her return or absence is not the measure of your success as a man. The only measure that matters is how you conduct yourself, how you hold your energy, and how you maintain your dignity through uncertainty. When a woman distances herself, your instinct might be to control the situation, to influence the outcome, to chase a result that feels desirable. That instinct is natural, but it is also counterproductive. Trying to manipulate or predict her actions reduces your energy and clarity. It anchors your mind in fear, longing, and insecurity, which is visible in subtle ways she senses even if she does not consciously articulate it. Attraction is energy-based, not logic-based. A man whose identity depends on her reactions is a man whose energy becomes predictable, needy, and ultimately unmagnetic. A man whose identity is grounded in his own stability becomes unpredictable in the right way, magnetic in the right way, and unforgettable in ways that words cannot convey. The principle here is both simple and revolutionary. Your power is independent of her decisions. Whether she comes back, distances further, or chooses someone else entirely is irrelevant to the state of your life, the strength of your mind, or the value you bring to the world. When you internalize this truth, everything changes. Your focus shifts from controlling her behavior to mastering your own. Your energy shifts from chasing outcomes to creating value. Your emotions shift from reactive to deliberate. You stop living in fear and start living with presence. Understand this carefully. Outcomes are temporary, fleeting, and often beyond your control. People are influenced by circumstances, moods, and timing, none of which reflect your worth or competence. What does reflect your worth is how you respond to unpredictability, how you carry yourself in the absence of control, and how you maintain alignment with your standards and principles regardless of external events. A man who bases his self-esteem on outcomes is a man who is constantly at the mercy of chance. A man who bases his self-esteem on his own actions, presence, and integrity is a man who is unshakable, who radiates confidence, and who becomes magnetic precisely because he cannot be broken by uncertainty. The beauty of this approach is that it liberates you. It frees you from anxiety, overthinking, and the endless mental loops that plague men when a woman pulls away. You are no longer a prisoner of her behavior. You are no longer a participant in a game of emotional roulette. Instead, you are the observer, the director of your own energy, and the architect of your own life. Your attention is fully invested in what you can control, your growth, your purpose, your energy, and not squandered on what you cannot control, her choices, her moods, or her timing. And paradoxically, this is what attracts her most. When she senses a man who is not desperate for her validation, who does not collapse under her distance, and who maintains composure regardless of her actions, she begins to respect him, wonder about him, and feel drawn to him in ways that cannot be manufactured through words, explanations, or chasing. The outcome becomes irrelevant because the energy you radiate becomes unforgettable. She may return, she may stay away, or she may come back on her own terms, but you remain unchanged. Your power remains intact, your dignity remains unshaken, your value remains absolute. This understanding also transforms your emotional experience. Instead of fear, you feel curiosity. Instead of desperation, you feel patience. Instead of pressure to act, you feel freedom to observe. And in this state, you can navigate relationships from a place of authority, presence, and authenticity, rather than reaction, need, and dependency. You are no longer chasing her approval. You are simply living fully, allowing her decisions to reveal their own truth without letting them define yours. So remember this clearly. The outcome of her distance is not a reflection of your worth. Whether she returns or remains distant does not determine your power, your dignity, or your identity. The man who understands this becomes unshakable, magnetic, and unforgettable. The man who bases his value on internal mastery rather than external results commands respect, curiosity, and attraction naturally. And the man who lives with this principle in mind can face any distance, any silence, any withdrawal without panic or compromise. Because in the end, the only outcome that truly matters is who you become in her absence, how you hold yourself in uncertainty, and how you honor your own standards and self-respect. When you master that, the world and every woman in it will respond to the energy you create.